channel, you know that primarily here at the Gagnon Atelier, and my art in particular, I mostly concentrate on religious art, like you see behind me, biblical, narrative, illuminated paintings. That's what we do here. That's like my thing. But when you're an artist, it's really important that you have multiple streams of income. Very, very important. And so not only do I exhibit artwork like you see behind me, but I also teach at my local college as an adjunct professor. I do that. I teach 2 classes every semester. I love, love, love teaching. I do private teachings here at the Atelier. And I also do pet portraits. And I don't just do a little pet portraits. It's really one of the primary sources of income for me as an artist. Right now, pet portraits are exploding. It's a big, big deal if you're an artist. Pet portraits are huge right now. And I don't think they're going away anytime soon. I paint between 48 and 72 pet portraits every single week. No joke. That's over 3,700 paintings a year that I do. So I know a thing or two about pet portraits. And so today I'm going to share with you the top 5 things that I pay attention to, that I concentrate on when I'm doing those pet portraits. And I think that these 5 things are going to be a big help to you as well. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to paint a chocolate lab, and we're going to share those 5 things with you. Hopefully you're going to enjoy this video, and with all that said, let's get started. All right, so the first one of our 5 is that we've got to tone our canvas. That's right, tone your canvas. This is really important especially for oil painters. You should be toning your canvas every time. That it preps your canvas to just accept the oil paint better than just this primed canvas. That's something that a lot of beginners don't understand the need to do. It's very important to tone your canvas. This is a white canvas. And so if I'm painting a brown pet, invariably there's going to be places where the canvas will come through. There'll be places where you might have missed a spot. It's subtle, but if your canvas is white and you're painting a brown pet, most likely a brown animal, the fur is going to be darker, and that white canvas is going to show through, and it's going to just look nasty. By toning the canvas, the paint's going to just adhere a little bit better. The acrylic paint will stick to acrylic paint much better. And if it was oil, I'd be doing the same thing. I would tone it, but I would use oil paints. But again, I primarily use a burnt sienna and a little bit of a light gray, and I just tone this canvas. And what this does is it kind of forgives all sins. It's kind of that kind of thing. So if there's any spot that you missed on your pet, if you've got like I'm going to be doing a chocolate lab, well, this is a brown canvas now. If there's any spots on the canvas that I missed, the brown paint coming through, it won't be as noticeable as if it was a white canvas bleeding through. So I have my drawing all sketched out. I did a basic grid pattern, and using the photo as a reference, I used Vine charcoal and sketched in an image to paint from. Just makes it easier, speeds up the process. Sometimes I'll do it with Vine charcoal like this. Other times I will just go ahead and just do the sketch with my paintbrushes and paint it in. But in this case, did it with charcoal, and now I'm going to paint directly on top of that. The old saying goes, the eyes are the window to the soul, and nothing has a soul more pure than your fur babies. But the biggest thing you have to remember where doing the eyes of an animal is just that. They're an animal. They're not people. We see human eyes so much, and when we're drawing, we tend to give everything human-like eyes, but your dog, your cat, your bird, your turtle, they don't have human eyes. And it's really important that you pay attention to the shape of the eye, the anatomy of the eye, whether it's a dog or a cat, etc. Dogs, for example, have very round eyes. The shape of the eye is very round, and even though they have whites in their eyes like people do, the actual eye takes up so much space that the only time you really see the whites of a dog's eyes are when they're looking up or down or at really extreme angles. And so it's really important that you take things like that into consideration. Cat eyes are very unique. Their eye takes up the entire socket practically. It's a very, very round shape, and it has a lot of black around it, as well as the underneath of the eye and above the eye has areas of much lighter color fur. And so these are things that you really have to pay attention to. They don't have human eyes. They have very unique eyes, and to get them right, you need to pay attention to the shape as well as putting that pop, that sparkle in them. The combination of those things are going to really make your pet portrait pop. If the eyes are the window to the soul, the nose is the leading edge of your pet. That's the part that they investigate everything with, and it's really important that you get that nose right. If you can get the eyes and the nose right, you can kind of get the fur a little off, and it'll still look like the pet you're trying to paint. And so you can be really forgiving with fur, but the eyes and the nose is what's going to sell that painting, what's going to make it pop, how you're going to capture that likeness, if you will. And so with that said, looking at the nose of a dog, of a cat, they're very different. You want to really concentrate on the shape, the design. And one of the best ways to look at it is the Superman logo. The Superman logo is really the shape of an animal's nose. A bear's nose, a tiger's nose, a lion's nose, your dog's nose. They all kind of have that basic shield shape to them. And when keeping that in mind, that Superman shield shape, you can kind of grasp the anatomy of the nose of your pet. And so here's pictures of a dog's nose, and then here's the simple shield shape, and now here's the Superman shield shape. And when you look at those things together, you can kind of get a grasp of the shape of the nose. And then it's pretty easy to figure out where to put the nostrils in. And then they have that line going down the center towards the upper lip. And with all of that combined, then you want to make sure that the nose looks moist. A healthy dog has a wet nose. The vets will all tell you that. And so you want to make sure, if you look closely at a dog's nose, at a cat's nose, things like that, they do have a little bit of a highlight to them, a nice little poppy shine. So that's something that you want to take into consideration. They also have, if you get really zoomed in, you will see that for the most part, dog snouts almost have like scales to them. And so it has a distinct texture to their nose. Very rarely in your paintings of pet portraits will I have to get that close to do that kind of detail, but when you do, it's important that you can kind of capture that. So be aware of that. The anatomy of the nose is a hugely important aspect to your pet portraits. I like to work dark to light, and so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to really establish the darkest areas first before I really do anything. I'm going to bring in those really dark spots. The darkest darks, and then I'm going to work to the brightest brights. And I want you to see right here. You'll notice that even in these areas where the brush isn't getting everything perfect at this stage. How the brown, the tone of the canvas coming through this area, it's forgiving. If this was white canvas, you would see all of these flaws in this area that because it's painted brown, and this is a brown dog, chocolate lab, these areas where the canvas is coming through a little bit, if I don't get it all, it's very forgiving. It looks natural. So this is, again, a great example of how toning your canvas can forgive a lot of sins in your painting. So something to think about. So when we're talking about painting those dogs that are scraggly, those ones with long hair, or like almost like permed fur, you know, where it's like a poodle, or in this case a Benji dog, the kind of brushes that I use for that kind of fur are these right here. These beat up, never throw away your beat up brushes. These are these are 3 rounds that have seen better days, and here's a filbert that has seen better days, and you can see when you get close to it, it is very what we call splayed. The brushes are all beat up. Again, seen better days. These ones especially, these have seen better days as well. Never throw these brushes away. These brushes are perfect for painting your scraggly dogs, and so that's what we're going to do just to show you when you're painting this. It's important that you get that part right. So I use big, nasty, beat up old brushes to get the colors and the, not the colors, but to get the textures that I'm looking for. The more beat up the brush, actually, the better. And last but not least, number five. Number five, whiskers. Whiskers, whiskers, whiskers. Now obviously this little guy, he doesn't have whiskers like we're thinking of cats. When you're painting cats, you need to use brushes to paint the whiskers. Well, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just use a round, and they'll use a brush. They'll use a brush like this. And actually, these kind of brushes are terrible for whiskers. These types of brushes are more really to get some textures, to get effects like the highlights in the eyes here, things like that. These types of brushes don't make long, thin lines. They don't make long, thin lines. The kind of brush that you want to use are brushes like this. These liner brushes, and you can see the bristles on them are very, very long. You can see here what I'm talking about. These three brushes in particular are just huge. I mean, that bristle is extremely long, and I'll get in close so you guys can see. And you can see how these brushes are used primarily for pinstriping. And so the brush bends really well, and you can see how they work. Let me show you how that works. If I take my hand, you can see how the brush bends. And so you can, when it's loaded up with a lot of paint, you can see it drags across. So pinstripers use this kind of a brush, and they are perfect for whiskers on cats and different animals that have long whiskers. This is really the brush to use. And last but not least, when we're painting, when you're doing a painting like this with the dog, looking at the color of the dog is really a big deal. And so when we're doing the backgrounds, one of the things that you want to get yourself is one of these. This is the most important tool you can have. And we have a video about this. If you look here in the comments above and below, in the description below and in above here, you will see a video linking to color wheel, why it's important, how to use it. We also have a whole video on color theory. Both of those videos are in the description below. This is super important because we're looking at this animal and we need to choose a background, but what color should we use? Well, in a case like this, a complementary color scheme would be the best choice. And so I keep one of these handy with me at all time. I actually have one just above the dog. Just above the dog, I have one of these taped to my easel at all times so that I can spin it and look for color schemes. I can spin it around and I can pick color schemes. And so if we look here on the color wheel right here, you see this arrow right here. And so looking at the dog, I see that he's a reddish brown. So if I go to the red, orange, and I see the kind of browns I'm looking for in the dog, you can kind of see right here and here, this general area, these are the colors, this red, orange, brown color of the dog. That's really what I'm going with in my chocolate lab. So if I say, we'll say red, orange, and if I go straight below that, I see bluish green. So if I make a bluish green background, that's going to make this dog just leap off the page. And so I think we're going to do that, and we're going to make a color that is a little bit of a bluish green, and that'll make this dog really, really pop. So there you have it. 5 tips for painting pet portraits. Number 1, tone that canvas. Can't tell you how important that is. It forgives many sins. Any bit of canvas that is peeking through where you maybe didn't get enough paint on, that toned canvas is going to hide that perfectly. So don't forget, number one, tone that canvas. Number two, remember, it's all about the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. If you want to have that personality of that pet come through, especially with dogs like pugs, English bulldogs, really young puppies, things like that, those eyes tell a story and scream personality. So be sure to spend extra time on the eyes. The next thing, the front end of that pet is always going to be the nose, especially if it's a dog. They're coming at you. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to sniff you out. Every pet, doesn't matter what kind of a pet it is, from a horse to a dog to a cow to a lizard to a snake, the front end, the snout, the nose is really important, especially with dogs and cats. Don't forget to take time to really study the anatomy of the nose, the structure of the nose, and looking at, is it a wet nose, it is a dry nose, things like that, the shininess of it, those things matter most. You can get things like the fur a little bit off. If you get the nose and the eyes to look really great, the rest of the dog can, a lot of times, or the cat can really, it comes together. So remember that. Also, speaking of fur, depending on the type of fur, choose your weapon wisely. What kind of brush should you use for, whether it's a long-haired animal, a short-haired animal, an animal with markings on it, spots, speckled, things of that nature. Certain types of cats have a lot of markings on them. So sometimes you want to dry brush that later on to get those nice textures. The brush matters, so choose that brush wisely when considering how you're going to paint the fur. And the last thing with the whiskers, you got to use long, thin liner brushes for those whiskers. You can knock them out fast if you get good with a little bit of practice. Whiskers can go like this very easily with choosing the right brush. The round brushes are not the brush to use for whiskers. Liner brushes are the perfect brushes to use for whiskers, but you can also use a flat if you get good with it. Practice those strokes. You can make a straighter, thinner line with a big flat than you can with a small round. I promise you that. So once again, choose your weapon wisely. So those are my top 5 things to think about when you are doing pet portraits. Do me a favor, check us out in the comments below. If you've got any great ideas, or you've got some things that you do that you think you'd like to share about painting pet portraits, share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your comments. Don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell. All those things help us out a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, remember, God loves you, and so does your old pal Tim. We'll talk to you next time.